The UN begins helping thousands of West African migrants leaving Libya. In Kenya, a public-private partnership to protect and preserve Kenya's coastline. And Mali dance labs bring performers together for a festival of experimentation. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. An explosion ripped through one of New York City's busiest transport hubs on Monday, causing authorities to evacuate hundreds of commuters. New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio is calling the blast an attempted terrorist attack. Police say one person is in custody. The suspect was hurt when the explosives strapped to his body detonated in the passageway connecting the Times Square and Port Authority subway stations during morning rush hour. The suspect has been identified as 27-year-old Akaid Allah, an immigrant from Bangladesh who lived in Brooklyn. He's reportedly in a serious condition in hospital. The fire department says 4 other injuries have been reported. The UN High Commission for Refugees is appealing to countries around the world to take in 1,300 mainly African refugees stranded in Libya. Many refugees are trapped in detention centers where they are held in appalling conditions and exposed to a range of abuses, including rape and torture. Niger has agreed to temporarily host the most vulnerable, including unaccompanied children and single mothers, until their resettlement claims in other countries are processed. The UNHCR plans to evacuate between 700 and 1,300 people from Libya to Niger by the end of January 2018. The UN agency is calling for resettlement countries to be available by the end of March next year. Now, the first group of 25 refugees from Eritrea, Ethiopia and Sudan were evacuated from Libya to Niger last month. The exploitation of migrants came under the spotlight recently after images broadcast by CNN appeared to show migrants being auctioned off as slaves by Libyan traffickers, sparking outrage in Europe and Africa. Now, about 27,000 Sierra Leoneans are estimated to have been disabled or have had their limbs amputated during the 1991 to 2002 civil war. Cutting off people's limbs, in most cases their hands, was one of the brutal strategies used by members of the Revolutionary United Front to terrify people into supporting them. Malkosh Mission is a non-profit organization that helps empower and educate poverty-stricken, marginalized, or afflicted female amputees and their dependents. Now, to tell us more, I'm joined in studio by Faith Okrafor-Smart, founder, Malkosh Mission International. Ms. Okrafor-Smart, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, it's been some years since that war ended, and we know that the government had some plans to help those who are affected, especially amputated by the rebel groups. Tell us, is the problem still that big, or how many of those have received help?
The problem is still big. Many of the amputees were promised reparation from the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which was was organized after the war, but unfortunately the money was misappropriated. So many of the amputees did not receive the reparation fund to get welfare, to get free education for their children and general welfare. So as a result, many of them are beggars on the street. We have lost 70% of the amputees. There's a high mortality rate prevalent, among these amputees, and we have made it our mission to elongate their lives, to equip and educate their children, and to empower the amputees.
Yeah, so here you're talking about people who are able-bodied people. Then they had children, but now they've been reduced to beggars because they cannot do anything.
Yes.
Now, so as an organization, a private, non-government organization, how are you approaching this issue? How are you helping them?
Well, we do medical missions to Sierra Leone, where we started that in 2016 last year, because since the war ended, the amputees have not received any free Medicare, and so hence the reason why many of them have passed away. And I've just come back from Sierra Leone, where we educated 332 children of amputees, including the orphans of the blood diamond victims.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do this? It can be a daunting task here. How do you put together the resources that you require in order to help them?
Okay, so we've been doing this for 9.5 years, and we're a 501c3 organization in the United States, so we raise funds. We're literally doing a campaign now, which is titled Color Purple International Month, where we ask people to wear purple and make a donation, or just make a donation without wearing purple. So we do our global campaign every year. This is actually the 5th year of us doing that. We used to do community events, and so we literally just raise funds as and when we need to, and go back and make the change we want to see.
What a coincidence! You didn't ask me to wear purple, but I love purple. Now, what help or what kind of assistance do you get from the government? Any form of collaboration with any government department in Sierra Leone?
We have never received any international funding or any governmental funding. We met with the Minister of Social Welfare in 2002, and we were told that Sierra Leone can't give what Sierra Leone doesn't have. And as a matter of fact, there is an investigation going on with the Ministry of Social Welfare. The former minister, Dr. Sylvia Blyden, was doing an investigation because monies are given every year to the Commission for People with Disabilities. But unfortunately, the amputees, who are the blood diamond victims, have never received such funding.
I mean, somebody literally steals this money and enriches themselves.
Yes.
Do you know anyone who has ever been held accountable?
The investigation had started. Unfortunately, she was relieved of her duty as the Minister of Social Welfare just 3 weeks ago. So that has been put to the back end because we have our elections coming up now and everyone's just focused on elections. So no, the Commissioner for People with Disabilities would obviously has been highlighted to or been asked to give account of where the monies have gone, but that has not really materialized.
In a few seconds, if you had an opportunity to speak to the authorities in Sierra Leone, what would be your message?
My message is that the amputees were not born this way. They they have a disability because of the wickedness of man. They are our constituents. We have our elections coming. We do need their support. I believe that we should be our brother's keeper. So we're asking the government of Sierra Leone to please keep their promise according to the Truth and Reconciliation recommendation and the UN treaty they signed to provide safeguards for people with disabilities. Amputees matter in Sierra Leone.
They do. And please, somebody stop stealing money that is meant to help those disabled people. Thank you very much for joining us on our program to tell us about your programs. That's Ms. Okrafo Smart, who's the founder of Malkosh Mission International. Now, Sub-Saharan Africa's development and use of the internet for business and government access lags behind other parts of the world. That's according to a new report by the NGO Internet Society. VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young talked to the report's author and Internet Society's Africa director.
While the internet has created global e-commerce, Sub-Saharan Africa's lagging utilization of the web is holding back development there. That's the finding of a new report from the NGO Internet Society, as stated via Skype from Geneva by IS Senior Fellow and Study Author Michael Kende.
The internet sector in Africa still has room to grow. They need to reach all customers with infrastructure and develop more internet companies. But ultimately, the internet sector is really, the main role is going to be as a driver for growth in the rest of the economy, for bringing all of the manufacturers, retailers, small farmers online.
Kende, who also lectures at the Graduate Institute of Geneva, included in his report research by the McKinsey Global Institute showing that in Africa, the internet contributed only 1.1% to the continent's GDP in 2012, while during that same year in developed economies, the web sector's GDP contribution averaged 3.7%. For so-called emerging economies worldwide, McKinsey says the internet's GDP contribution that year was 1.9%. Kende's report also states that while sub-Saharan African nations vary widely as to the availability of the internet, one technology important to business is already in place.
There's still divisions and divides between the countries. Some of them are already at over 50% penetration, such as South Africa and Kenya. Others are still at 10% or below. So there's still a great amount of work that needs to be done. But one point that is clear is in all of these countries, the availability of broadband, mobile broadband.
That access to broadband internet over mobile phones is financially empowering sub-Saharan Africans, according via Skype by Internet Society Africa Research Bureau Director Dawit Bekele.
In fact, the majority of the African population doesn't have a bank account. And mobile money has brought for the first time financial services to many Africans. That is why it has been adopted that widely all over Africa, and especially in countries like Kenya. So it is not just one opportunity for access to financial services. It is often the only opportunity to use financial services.
Sub-Saharan Africa's embracement of mobiles will broadly stimulate e-commerce there, according to Kende.
And this really is the driver for, or is going to be and is the driver for online businesses, online retail, because everyone can pay through their mobile phones to a degree that's much greater in some countries than it is in developed countries where we all have credit cards and banks and other ways of paying.
The internet is creating a so-called wired sub-Saharan Africa, a goal promoted by the African Union. It and others say not only will overall economic opportunity grow, but also the ability to transform isolated areas into integrated and contributing components of each African nation's progress. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make a move towards peace towards peace with Palestinians. Now, Netanyahu is in Paris ahead of a meeting with EU foreign ministers. Macron's remarks come in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and move the U.S. embassy there. Now, the move has sparked a wave of protests in the Arab and Muslim world. Fresh protests erupted in Egypt, Lebanon, Pakistan, and elsewhere on Sunday. VOA's Laditza Hoke reports.
Lebanese security forces fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse angry demonstrators near the U.S. embassy outside Beirut. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees live in the country, where many fled after they were expelled from their homes after Israel's founding. National protests against Trump's decision also took place in Morocco's capital of Rabat and in Egypt's Cairo.
Jerusalem is Islamic and Arab, and Trump's decision is invalid according to the international laws and in accordance with UN Resolution 181. How can Trump make an invalid decision? The decision is void and false.
During a visit to Paris Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisted that Jerusalem has always been the capital of Israel.
Paris is the capital of France. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It's been the capital of Israel for 3,000 years. It's been the capital of the Jewish state for 70 years.
Macron and other European leaders criticized Trump's decision on Jerusalem, saying the city's status is a crucial issue to be negotiated between Israel and the Palestinians. The French president said his country stands by the two-state solution for the Middle East conflict, and that solution envisions East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state.
France wants two states living in peace with internationally recognized borders to emerge in the region between Israel and Palestine. In this context, I explained to Prime Minister Netanyahu that I disapproved of the recent declaration by the President of the United States, which France believes runs contrary to international law and is dangerous for peace.
Macron asked Netanyahu to offer a gesture of peace to the angry Palestinians.
In terms of gestures, I said it seems to me that freezing settlement building and confidence measures with regard to the Palestinian Authority are important acts to start with. which we discussed with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
In recent years, the Israeli government has been approving the construction of numerous Jewish settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem, which are illegal according to international laws. Netanyahu said his government is open to peace talks with the Palestinians, but that Israel's offers have been rejected. Zlatisa Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Well, now coming up, officials tap Kenyan citizens to help save the country's coastline. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
On to North Africa now. Morocco's government is partnering with civil society groups to plant the roots of understanding about deforestation's potential harm to local communities. Robert Sadi reports.
Planting thousands of new trees could combat deforestation in Morocco. A mix of climate change and human activity devastated areas of the country's forest ecosystems. Experts there say the eco-damage affects more than 12% of the country, 9 million hectares of land, and the government needs help.
The state's efforts should be completed by partnerships with the civil society as a whole. Today's initiative with the Rotary Club shows that beyond planting 80,000 new trees throughout the entire country, it is an example of how preserving the forest's heritage is not an exclusive task for the state, but a shared initiative where everyone is responsible.
So the government joined forces with this year's International Rotary Chairman.
He decided this year that every Rotarian should plant a tree. As we are more than 1.2 million members, our district governor this year for North Africa decided himself on 1.2 million trees for Maghreb. So 800,000 trees in Morocco and the rest spread across Algeria, Tunisia and Mauritania.
Along with the effort to protect local ecosystems from climate change, there's also a financial incentive to repopulating forests.
The forest is a source of revenue for a huge number of inhabitants of the rural areas, and they have to be aware of the fact that they cannot cut the branch they're sitting on. This is why we should have awareness campaigns, especially after the creation of many activities that are bringing more revenues to the rural areas.
The High Commission says that 80% of the annual $10 million in revenue from just this one forest returns to the community. That means new trees could keep the economic future bright for generations to come. Arasha Erbasadi, VOA News.
Coral reefs not only stop erosion, they are incredibly biodiverse. Mangroves, on the other hand, store carbon and keep rising seas at bay. But UN officials warn the Earth is losing both at an alarming rate. In Kenya, government and UN officials are enlisting the help of citizens to replace what's being lost. VOA's Kevin Enoch reports.
These local fishermen off the Kenyan coast are helping the environment and helping themselves. They are volunteering in a government-run project to rehabilitate the coral reefs off Wasini Island that are degrading because of climate change.
The coral has made the island famous by making it a tourist attraction. It has developed our community because we now have many visitors who want to come and see how we are transplanting corals at Wasini. They come in large numbers.
Tangu waliposikia tuna system ya transplanting corals katika Wasini Island, ndio wanatufikia kwa wingi hivi sasa.
And since corals host a huge and diverse ecosystem, rebuilding the reef means more fish for Wasini villagers to catch.
Here in Ghazi, we get 1.5 tons per hectare. That is the carbon stored below ground. And if you add the one which is stored above ground, which is up to 500 tons, we're talking about 2,000 tons of carbon in the system. But since we have started cultivating corals from 2014 to 2015, we have seen an increase in the catch from 3,000 to 4,000. We are now getting about 4,600 kilos of fish.
In nearby Ghazi Bay, conservation efforts are focused on the local mangrove forests. The mangroves play two vital roles in the local community. They act as a barrier to erosion, and they store huge amounts of planet-warming carbon.
Here in Ghazi, we get 1.5 tons per hectare. That is a carbon stored below ground. And if you add the one which is stored above ground, which is up to 500, you are talking about 2,000 tons of carbon in the system.
The community here is working with the local government to plant 4,000 mangrove trees every year. That earns about 3,000 carbon credits in the process. Each credit is worth about $5.
In the last 100 years, we've lost at least 1/3 of the world's mangrove forests. They're being lost at a rate at 3 to 5 times higher than average deforestation rates of other forests. So these are very vulnerable ecosystems.
Paying locals to restore the reefs and mangrove forests is part of Kenya's commitment to reduce its carbon emissions 30% by 2030. Kevin Enix, VOA News.
Well, it's estimated that more than 1 million college-educated immigrants in the U.S. are in low-skilled jobs. They have trouble finding work in their professions, including the U.S. tech industry, which desperately needs skilled workers. This was high on the agenda at a special technology industry job fair in San Francisco, which brought together refugees, newly arrived immigrants, and potential employers. VOA's Michelle Quinn reports.
Job fairs are routine here in San Francisco, but this one is special. 50 new immigrants and refugees hailing from countries including Russia, Iran, and Eritrea, looking for work. Khalad Turkmani is from Syria with a degree in computer science. For his first 9 months in San Francisco, he worked survival jobs, selling shoes, assembling furniture, developing websites for $10 an hour.
When you know the same work that anyone else who's born here will get paid $50 an hour, it was super painful. But on the same time, for me, work is work.
Turkmani, who has asylum, went through a program at Upwardly Global, an organization that teaches skilled immigrants and refugees how to search for a professional job in the U.S. Here, he learned about networking America style, and now is an IT project manager. Emmanuel Iman, another graduate who now works for Upwardly Global, says little things make a difference when looking for a job in the U.S.
Here in the United States, you are expected to look directly into someone's eyes. And when you meet someone, you have to give them a firm handshake. All those show confidence.
Recent immigrant job seekers have to learn a new way to talk.
Rather, they say the team, we, the group, the company, the organization. But in the United States, that is very different. People talk about, I did this.
Ivan Vislov, a Russian immigrant at the event with his wife, expected tech jobs would be easy to find when they arrived in Silicon Valley.
We are professional. We are professional product manager and business analyst in IT field. That's why we came to the San Francisco.
Vislov plans to follow up with Yelp, TaskRabbit, and others. And he plans to network at hackathons and job fairs. He has to. For Vislov, giving up is not an option. Michelle Quinn, VOA News, San Francisco, California.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. In Bamako, the festival highlights the continent's dance traditions. We'll be right back.
The minister
leader in charge of relations with the assembly said no.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. The average wedding in South Korea last year cost around $64,000. But this bride and groom are paying a fraction of that, renting the reception venue for just $60. The wedding dress was bought online for $100. People's desire for cheaper weddings is part of a worrying underlying trend in South Korea. High wedding costs are leading more people to get married at a later stage in life. Now, this means they're putting off having children in a country which already has one of the world's lowest birth rates. Now, the trend towards small, low-cost ceremonies began in 2014, a year when marriage rates hit an all-time low. Next up, dancers from across Africa and Europe took to various stages in Mali's capital, Bamako, for the Ketli Noir Laboratories, a meeting and sharing of ideas about a movement named after the renowned Haitian dancer and choreographer of the same name. Over 2,000 dancers, musicians, technicians, and choreographers took part in the event, which was open to the public. One of the workshops was titled Dance and New Technologies. Some shows use technology to create various layers of performance. Mali is one of Africa's dance capitals and the home of the world's renowned dance, Bamako dance. And finally, another day, another use for 3D printing technology. Veterinarians in California have helped a 4-month-old puppy recover from a devastating injury by printing a 3D cast for its skull. Loka, a 4-month-old female Staffordshire Bull Terrier, had been bitten and severely injured by another dog. The doctor saw Loka's case as an opportunity to use a newly developed 3D printed face mask designed by engineering students at the University of California's Davis. Loka's cast was only removed when she had to eat, and she used it for about a month. Loka's 1-month checkup revealed a new bone was forming, and within 3 months, her injuries had healed very well. And that is what is trending today. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Headlights are the 2 bright lights in front of a car. But what does a deer have to do with headlights?
I cannot believe you got to meet Hillary Clinton. That must have been so incredible.
I know. It was so incredible that I couldn't say anything. I was like a deer caught in headlights.
Well, that's understandable, but maybe next